Hello, welcome to today's class. Today we would be analyzing the December paper for CBSE NET examination paper first. In the previous classes, we have already discussed the solutions, the video solutions for all the 60 questions for the NET examination paper 1. Here we would be basically understanding questions were asked from which topic were given weightage from the consecutive years, which topic are gaining importance, and what should be our strategy to achieve success in 2015 examination. Okay, so what we are trying to focus is how to prepare for 2015 examination based on the analysis of the December 2014 paper. So we'll have a very simple slideshow for this. Okay, so I have I'll try to do the focus areas, the section wise analysis, and the comparison of the December examination with the past June examination, and we'll try to understand the weightage of the various sections. Okay, so let's start with the focus areas. Now for December 2014, the focus was on again the theory of logic, which was very important in June 2014 examination, and this time there were a lot of questions asked from current affairs section. Okay, and so current affairs in the field of education and general current affairs was important for December 2014 examination. Also to note here, the current affairs that was asked was mainly from the month of September, October. Okay, so for December examination, we can understand the current affairs in the month of September, October is very important. Similarly, for the June examination, the current affairs from the month of March and April specifically is very, very important. In December 2013, there was a slight shift in the focus area where the questions were asked on cultural heritage, and previous to 2013 there were a lot of questions that were asked on defense and space technologies. Now if you just get a traditional book from the market, it would cover only 50% of what is really asked. The concepts that are really changing their importance, the concepts of theory of logic and a special focus on teaching and research aptitude in these days, which is mainly focused on the recent development. So you have questions in the field of education that were asked basically on smart classrooms, digital empowerment. So all these topics are gaining importance in recent days, and therefore I should say there are questions which are mix of current affairs and the conventional teaching. So you just can't rely on the traditional books. You need to have a very updated knowledge. Now most of the students face English as a barrier to solve problems based on reading comprehension, a question on logic that there was a passage which you need to solve. So the best thing I suggest to those students is just to read the question paper in the Hindi language. Okay, so that would give you a better understanding of the concepts, and once you have a of the concept, you can easily solve the questions. So it's immaterial. Like UGC won't look into it whether you are reading it in English or you are reading it in Hindi. The only thing that matters here is whether you are doing your question correctly or not. And to do that correctly, just go the language barrier that you have. Okay, try to solve the question in whatever language, but you must be very clear about the concepts. Now what we are doing here is, in the subsequent slides, I'll have a comparative table here, okay, where I'm mentioning the number of questions. So for December 2013 examination, there were 12 questions on computers and communication. In June, there were 12 questions again, and this year's examination in December 2014, you had 10 questions on which were included from computers and communication. These questions were very direct. They require in-depth reading and just fundamental knowledge of the basic aspects of computers and communication. There is not much comprehensive that you must know about. So these questions were very, very direct, and I should say, since they were direct, if you have read enough, you know enough on computers, you can secure very good marks in this section. So there are some sections in paper 1 which are really safe sections, I should say. So computer and communication is a kind of safe section. Now higher education. So this time there were 5 questions. Previously there used to be 4 questions. So on an average, the weightage remains the same for higher education. As the trend is maintained, most of the questions are from current affairs. This year there was a question on number of fake universities in Uttar Pradesh. Okay, so there were again the questions on current affairs, which were mainly dealing with current affairs, especially from the month of September and October. There were UGC schemes, okay, that were asked, okay. So all these things which are happening in the field of education are very important. Next year examination for June 2015, Mungekar committee can be an important topic. In polity, again, we see the weightage remains nearly the same. This time there were 4 questions. Previously, they used to be on an average 3 questions. The questions on polity were direct. You need to focus mainly on the section on constitution. Okay, environment and culture. The question trend is decreasing. As I said, in 2013, there was a specific emphasis on culture and heritage, but that decreased in 2014, and no such questions in December 2014 examination again. So this time there were just 6 questions on environment and geography. The questions were very direct. Some of them were based on the recent environmental summit that was held in Peru. Okay, so these were the questions. This was the section that you can do if you have sound knowledge of the current affairs section. Okay. Now data interpretation question, as usual, again 5 questions this time. Every time there are 5 questions on data interpretation. These questions require basic knowledge of the concept. You must be very fast at the calculation. This time the numbers were direct, so the calculations were easy. Okay, only one question on data interpretation was tricky this time, that asked you to calculate the average annual growth rate, and that was the question most of the students got struck up with. It was a kind of conceptual question, because in average annual growth rate you don't need to find out the difference directly. Okay, what you need to find out is you need to find out the growth rate for each year and then find the average of that growth rate. Okay, so that question was very tricky in data interpretation. Rest of all the questions were very direct. You need to do the percentage change or percentage increase. So you need to do the final year minus base year divided by base year into 100. That is a basic formula you must know for data interpretation questions. Then teaching aptitude this time gained high importance. Usually there are around 4 questions. This time there were 7 questions from teaching aptitude section. Most of the questions are such that you must consider yourselves in a teaching situation, that you are teaching a set of students. Okay, so you must consider yourselves in the educational setting and then try to answer the question. Okay, so these are much more application based questions rather than theoretical questions. So the importance of teaching aptitude for December examination has increased. So this has become again a vital topic for June 2015 examination. Now research aptitude section, as you can see, the weightage is decreasing. There are lesser questions on research aptitude this time. This time there were only 5 questions as compared to previous years. The focus areas were thesis writing, dissertations, research designs. Okay, so you must cover the basic fundamental sampling cases. So these were the basic questions that were asked in research aptitude this time. So you must cover the basic, you must have a basic fundamental knowledge on what is research aptitude and research design, the concepts of research. Okay. Mental ability questions were again simple. Again, there were 4 questions as similar to past year's papers. Okay, so what you need to do is just regain the lost knowledge. You must study the things again and again, solve some questions off and on. So that will give you a good practice on solving mental ability and mathematics questions. Now in this, sets and when is a very important section. You have 1 question every year on set and when diagram, and that's a very scoring question. And don't think I'm saying just 1 question. It's a drop makes an ocean. So even if you are doing one question correct in a sequence of sets, okay, you are doing a multiple set of correct questions. So that's very important for the paper 1, because since the paper 1 marks are now being added, it's very important to give proper focus on paper 1 and not just on your subject. Okay, so at doorsteptutor.com we have a complete portal where you can practice a lot of questions on mental ability and past year's papers. This time there was a question on blood relations. So there was just 1 question on blood relation. Last time the question was on directions. Okay, so both these topics are now important. The questions are direct and simple and very scoring, as I said, for the set and Venn diagram. Similarly, blood relations and direction questions are also very scoring. Okay, so these questions are simple, direct and scoring. So you must be very good at mental ability and fundamental mathematics so that you can score very good marks in these sections. Again, there was one question in coding decoding similar to the June 2014 examination in December 2014. Also, you had a question on coding decoding. The question was very simple. You can refer our separate session on coding decoding classes where we have talked about coding decoding in detail. There were also questions on alphabet series this time. Okay, you can refer the circle of letters, the classes on alphabet series, which are being conducted separately on YouTube for the better understanding of these concepts. Now, we'll come on to the most important section. Logical argument and reasoning, there were 4 questions. One was an analytical reasoning that was simple. 3 questions on logical arguments. One of them on the square of opposition. 2 of them on logic and argumentative writing. We have a separate videos on square of oppositions at YouTube and logical arguments and logic and argumentative writing. Okay, so all these topics are very, very important. This is a very tricky topic and conceptual that you must understand. Most of the questions in this are asked on the theoretical aspects of logic. They are not asked on the practical or the applicative aspects. So you must be very, very profound in the theoretical aspects of logic and philosophy. As I mentioned, square of opposition is a very important topic. And this logical section is gaining importance since June 2014. In June 2014, also there were around 4 questions, and this year the pattern was repeated. So there is very, very high probability that in June 2015 examination also there would be good number of questions on logical arguments and logic writing. Okay. Now questions based on current affairs. The focus was again on environmental issues in higher education in the field of current affairs. The trend is similar to 2013 and June 2014 examinations. This time, in the universities section, the question was on fake university. In June examination, the question was on meta university. Whatever the case, there is one question in higher education at least which deals on current affairs in the field of higher education. Okay, this year there was also a question on digital empowerment, that is a new scheme by the government released on 7th August 2014. This year the question on environment was mainly focused on cyclone Hudhud that affected the coast in the month of October, the coast of Andhra Pradesh in the month of October. Last year the question was on urban smog that was prevalent in China in the month of around April. Okay, so as I said, March, April are important focus for June examination, and September, October are very important for December examination. Now, what we are trying to understand about the reading comprehension and logic. So there are 9 questions in total that were very tricky. So the reading comprehension, the language was very dicey this time. Okay, it's better to solve the question on reading comprehension by reading the passage in Hindi language, so you can understand the passage at least. If you are unable to understand the passage, you won't be able to solve the questions. Okay, so it's very important to understand the language. However, this time the reading comprehension questions were very, very directly on the statements given in the passage, except one question which was based on perception, the writer's perception, and that was a question based on understanding and conceptual in nature. Okay, the 4 questions on logic were again tricky. So I should say this year, out of the 60 questions, there were 9 questions that were really, really difficult for most of the students. Now in this slide, I have done a comparative analysis starting December 2013, June 2014 and December 2014. I have tried to emphasize which section had which kind of focus and which was important. So as you see, the focus on culture and heritage has swiped off. Okay, from December 2013, where there were a lot of 6-7 questions on culture and heritage, there are no questions being asked further. Reading comprehension used to be easier in the previous days. Now it is becoming tougher, and since it's getting tough, the language is also becoming difficult. Questions, although being direct, it's very difficult for most of the students to comprehend the passage. Okay, so for that I usually suggest is to read it in your local language. Okay, since UGC gives the paper in both the languages, you have an extra advantage of understanding it in one language and answering it in other language. Questions on logic and philosophy, there used to be no questions previously, But the trend is changing, and there are high number of questions that are asked in the concepts of logic, square of opposition, argument, types of arguments. Okay. Then you have questions on data interpretation. This time the questions on data interpretation were easy. The calculations could be fast because there were simple numerals that you needed to add, 200, 400, and so on. In June 2014 examination, the calculations were very much tough. But in this examination, there was some tricky formulas that were asked on the average annual growth rate, for example. That was one of the most complicated questions in data interpretation. Higher education, the questions were moderate along with current affairs. That was very important. So current affairs element is very important. And again in environment, this time the questions were easy, but the main focus was current affairs. So that was again an important section this year. So if I do a kind of weightage for December 2014 examination, sorry, I could say there were around 5 questions from data interpretation and 5 for reading comprehension. So out of 60, you have 10 questions here. You have around 10 questions from computers and communication, 12 questions from teaching and research, around 6 questions were there from geography and environmental issue, which were direct and easy and based on current affairs. Mental ability was okay, moderate kind of questions. There were 8 questions. Logic was a difficult section this time with 4 questions. Higher education was a section which had 5 questions. The weightage is increasing in the recent year. Okay, and politics again had 4 questions. The trend remains the same as the previous years. So with this, we cover the analysis for the December 2014 examination. This gives us an idea as to what to prepare for the June 2015 examination. We can see that we need to prepare about the basic concepts on logic. We need to be very profound in data interpretation and reading comprehension, because if we do those 2 sections correctly, we are sure to score 10 marks out of 60. Okay. Then the questions on logic. If you just view the 20 minutes video we have on square of opposition, you are sure to score 2 to 3 correct questions in logic. Okay. Then you have huge number of questions that were asked on teaching aptitude and research aptitude. And again, current affairs is gaining importance in the recent days. The questions on computers were very simple. You just need to have a fundamental knowledge on what is computers and the basics of computers. So with this, we complete the topic-wise analysis for the CBSE NET Paper 1 examination for December 2014 examination. We have already discussed the video solutions for these in the previous sessions. You can have the detailed explanations for all the questions there. So stay tuned for more updates on UGC examination. Till then, have a good day.